Well, good evening, or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Student Success Career Options Edition. Appreciate you guys watching this afternoon. We are going to go ahead and launch into a topic that I think is really important, specifically as, obviously you guys are in, the beginning stages of thinking about your career and, going through your life and where that might be headed. And so wanted to add a specific section in this class to address career options for you guys. My experience with this was a little bit more difficult. I just think that we do a very poor job of, discussing with our youth kind of the options that are in front of them, and where they might be able to go in their lives and what specific jobs do. My own experience with this is really interesting because, I can tell you honestly that if I had had somebody guiding me towards a specific route, a specific career, and had presented other options for me particularly, I would have definitely chosen a different career path. I think that if I had accurate information about different jobs and what you do in each of these different jobs and the skill sets required and the strengths required for each of them, I definitely would not have chosen the field that I'm actually in currently. And so, I guess just to launch in, my recommendation for you guys today is to really just do your own research and do your own study on positions, what you could potentially do with the rest of your life, just the qualifications and the strengths associated that you need, or the strengths of the qualifications, etc., that you need for each different position. I think that the way that I would start this, if I was to rewind the clock to 19 and I had access to Google as much as we do now and the information that's held there, is I would recommend to you that you should Google, what particular jobs do. I remember essentially the way that somebody explained to me what an engineer does was that they said, an engineer just sits around and does math all day. And so I was very good at math and science growing up, and they said, oh, you might want to be an engineer. And, then they said, an engineer sits around, they do math all day, they have an understanding in science, and so they kind of combine both of those things, and that's their job. And that's just not the case, right? That I looked at that job and I was like, I like math and I like science, but man, if I'm not sitting around doing math problems all day, it's not going to happen, right? That just sounds like a horrible job, and that's really not what an engineer does, right? If you want to distill down what an engineer does, it's that they use math and they use science and they apply those concepts into real world situations and try to solve problems using those things. And if somebody had explained to me potentially, what an engineer does or what an accountant does or what, et cetera, something that fits my skill sets a little bit more, I would have ended up down a completely different career path. And so that's why I wanted to get on here and talk to you guys about that. So going back to the comment that I made on Google is just that, I would really recommend you guys to go and really spend some time Googling different jobs, what particular jobs do every day. I know that there have been many YouTube videos actually that have covered what different jobs do, and or you could maybe Google a day in the life of an electrician, a day in the life of an accountant, a day in the life of a CPA, or a day in the life of an engineer, a day in the life of a secretary or a teacher or whatever it is, right? That you could spend some time and they could tell you exactly what that person is doing every day, so that you get a really good picture of like, okay, is this job for me? Additionally, my other recommendation for you guys would be to cross-reference your skills, your passions, your abilities, your strengths, and your personality with these various things. So like, to use a kind of a goofy example, if you for some reason love Legos and you've always loved Legos and you've loved Legos since you were 5, you could say Google something that says, I love Legos very much, what job would be great for me? Or something like that. Hey, I'm really passionate about helping people improve their mental health. What job would be appropriate for me? I'm really interested in nutrition and working out. What jobs might be really good for me? And then kind of cross-reference that with your particular personality, right? So I have a friend of mine who's extremely introverted. And so when I talk to him about my job and how I interact with people, I talk to people on the phones, I get candidates in the door constantly, I'm interviewing constantly. He talks to me about it and he says, being an introvert, that sounds horrible. That sounds like just a nightmare to me. And so kind of cross-reference your personality to say, okay, does the personality fit really line up with who I am as a person, right? Do I need somebody who's specifically really outgoing? Am I an outgoing person? One that I see very frequently is I had a gal who told me that she wants to be a CFO, but she is extremely, like, to the nth degree conflict averse. She will do whatever she can to get away from any kind of perceived conflict. And my response to that is, there's no way that you're going to be able to be a CFO, because a CFO every day, day in and day out, has to have difficult conversations, right? Hey, it's not in the budget. We're going to have to do some layoffs. Or there's a number of different situations. Hey, this contract doesn't look good. Let's go back and renegotiate it. Which is a difficult and hard conversation to have with different people. So, it's one of those things where you really just need to think about, okay, what skills do I have? What passions do I have? And what does my personality say? And then Google it. I mean, honestly, if I can give you a recommendation, it's just to Google your questions and spend, maybe 2-3 hours, put your phone down, shut down any other browser windows and just Google anything that you can on, hey, what does an accountant do? What kind of personality do you need to be an accountant? What kind of passions would line up with this in my career? What kind of, abilities and strengths do I have, or, here are my strengths and abilities, what kind of a position would be good for me? Or even do a strengths finder test of some sort, and then take your results and say, I got these results on this kind of a strengths finder test. What jobs might be good for me? I think that this can really help you as you go along your life, because I've seen so many people who have spent just a ton of time kind of beating their head against the wall, trying to make and force something to fit that really just doesn't, right? I gave an example a couple of weeks back about the gal who was terrible in math and science and then picked a job or a career path that required her to have education that was extremely heavy in math and science, and it just made her miserable, right? That wasn't a good option for her, and ultimately that wasn't where her passions and her skills lied, and that she could find other outlets for those passions, that she had a passion for caring for people, right? And so she said, well, maybe I should be a nurse. It's like, well, you caring for people, could lead down a very, very different road. I would say, you can make the case that some, say a personal trainer, she's a person who is very into personal fitness. And you say, okay, well, you love helping people and improving their lives and caring for them. Maybe you being a personal trainer might be a better fit for you, because it really doesn't involve as much math and science as, you being a doctor or a nurse practitioner or something like that. And I would also, if I can give you guys some other feedback and some other advice, is that I would look up all the qualifications for the position that you're looking into, and make sure that you feel comfortable with the qualifications that you need to have, right? So to give you a really great example, a doctor requires 8 years of school along with residency, which is, I think, another 4 years. So you're in school for roughly 12 years of your life. Are you comfortable with that? There's a big paycheck along with that, but is that something that you can stomach, as 12 years of school, right? A great example is I had a gal who was talking to me about, she was a vet. She was going to school to be a vet tech as a certification program. And she said, ultimately I want to be a veterinarian. And once I finish my vet tech school, I'm going to apply to veterinary school, and that's what I'm going to do. Well, it turned out, I did a quick Google search because I said, I don't think that's how it works. And she said, well, yeah, it does. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna Google this, because this seems like a very big decision. You're about to, cut a check to this veterinary technician school. And it turns out that a vet tech certification program does not count towards your veterinary science degree and you ultimately becoming a veterinarian. And so she had wasted, couple $1,000s in 6 months of her life trying to pursue something that she just didn't understand the qualifications for. And so what I can say is you just make sure that you look up those qualifications for the jobs that you want. Once you decide, this might be a good career path for me. I had one individual who was in the middle of their degree who told me they want to be a tattoo artist. And it's like, well, what qualifications do you need to have to be a tattoo artist? And not one of them required a degree, right? I have had another person who come out of high school and they said, I really, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get my AA and blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to become an electrician. It's like, well, electricians go through a union and more of like a different program than just a standard AA degree. So did you know that? And he wasn't aware that it was a completely different path to becoming an electrician than it would be, to get your AA degree and move forward. He just wasn't aware. And so I would just encourage you guys, although it seems basic, to really just look up the positions and really have an honest conversation with yourself about, okay, do I have the skills to do this? Do I have the drive to do this? Do the passions line up? Does my personality line up with this? And number one, and lastly, am I comfortable with all the qualifications and the work it's going to be required to get the position that I may want? So lastly, I'll keep this kind of this talk short. The last thing I would mention to you guys and what I would encourage you guys with is that where you start in your career is not where you end. And I think we put so much pressure on young people to make a decision, and they feel like, it's so common for the expression to say, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I heard that a lot when I was declaring my major and figuring out some things with kind of that whole situation. And it's like, I remember feeling kind of the weight of the world on my shoulders, going like, man, this is a huge decision. And it's not that it's not a big decision, but I was making it to be like the world on your shoulders kind of a decision, when in reality, it's not a decision of what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Where you start isn't where you end. And so I know very few people who have started their career and 30 years later, they're doing the exact same job in the exact same field that they were in when they started. And so, when you're looking at a degree program, when you're looking at a major, when you're looking at potentially, going, say, into the union or whatever it is that you're going to pursue throughout your life, you need to understand that it is a large decision, right? I'm not going to try to minimize it, but that being said, it's not a rest of your life decision, right? A great example of this is actually, if you know my dad, it's actually, he didn't start, in this field. He started as a counselor. Right, he got his degree in psychology. My mom's another great example. She started in psychology, got her degree, ended up going into counseling, and realized that counseling really just was not something that she wanted to do for the rest of her life. And so she used her skills and her abilities that she had gained from becoming a counselor to going forward as somebody who's in training and development at a large company. And she's done extremely well there, and she ended up, that's where she's going to finish out her careers in training and development. But where she started her career was completely different. And so I would just say that, guys, we put a lot of emphasis on that particular decision of what your degree is going to be and quote unquote what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I think you guys got to be a little bit easier on yourselves and realize that, this doesn't have to be a rest of my life decision. I think that it can be paralyzing if you put that much weight to it. And if I can have a particular recommendation in my own life that I know that the job that I'm in right now isn't what I'm going to do for forever, but it's equipped me and given me a lot of skills and abilities that I wouldn't have otherwise had, that I think will transfer to whatever it is that I decide to do next. And so I think that is a good context to add to this total discussion, to say, hey, try some things, right? When you're making a decision like that, you don't, to get a job when you get out of school or when you're in school or whatever, this isn't a job that you have to stay in for the rest of your life. This isn't a job that you could decide that you absolutely hate this job tomorrow and you could quit and get another job in a year. You could decide to pay the bills for 6 months and say, oh, you know what, I'm really going to save so I can spend 3 months, really figuring out what I want to do, or what I want to achieve. And And lastly, I may have said this already, but lastly, this is really going to be the last time. I would just suggest, and something that was suggested to me, to kind of reframe the question of what you want to do with quote unquote the rest of your life or for your career, is to rephrase the question, not what you want to do for the rest of your life, but what problems do you want to solve? What kind of people do you want to help? I think opening the question up a little bit like that really can help you think about something in a different way. What problem do you want to solve really gets at the heart of what you're passionate about, what things that you could talk about for long periods of time, and you say, oh yeah, one of them for me, as you guys may have mentioned in earlier discussions, is personal finance, right? That I can talk to anybody for forever about personal finance and the markets and just anything to do with money, how it exchanges, businesses, things like that. And so I have realized over time that that's probably something that I would like to get into more. And so I'm taking the appropriate steps to maybe transition my career into something along those lines, because I realize that I really enjoy helping people to try to understand that better, to understand their finances better, to guide them and shape them and help them make good decisions in that respect. And so, if I can encourage you guys, it would be to say, okay, what particular topic could you spend a lot of time with, and what particular topic do you enjoy helping people with? What problems do you enjoy helping people solve? And so that might be able to help you guys moving forward. I hope that gives you a little bit of context. So I'm going to sign off again, guys. You guys have an assignment due this Saturday, 11:59. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.